Try and help you out a little bit today, folks. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a Conspiracy Theory Thursday edition of Radioactive. You know, we do this every Thursday. Now, Conspiracy Theory Thursday, as you know, is the time when we talk about things we can't prove. You know, we can't prove. We can show you evidence. We can give you insider views. These are things that are unprovable in the traditional sense of the word. But these are things which may very well impact your long-term survival. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, one of the things that one of the purposes of this program is to get you prepared for whatever may be coming our way. Now, I don't know what that is. I really don't know. Not sure that anybody does. But we do have some people that can help us out, and one of those people is Julie Rowe. Now, Julie Rowe is our guest today on the program. She'll be with us for the full 3 hours, and we are most appreciative to her for taking some time out to come on the program with us today. So without further ado, let's go to Julie. Julie, thank you very much for coming on Radioactive today.
You're welcome, Steve.
Now, you kind of, I guess, you and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday, and in a weird way and in a completely different way, we have sort of the same goal, and that is to help people getting prepared for what may be coming our way in the future. Is that too broad of a statement?
Well, you know, Stevie and I we've never met in person, and I really, but I don't really, I'm not really familiar with your show or kind of what your full purpose is, but I just know what mine is, and that is that in 2004 I had a near-death experience and was shown quite a few things, kind of panorama of some of the world's history, for lack of a better word, and then things coming in the future, many of which have happened already because it's been over a decade now, and many things which are just right at our doorstep. So in that way, I don't want to say part of the condition, but one of the agreements that was that was made for me being shown some of these things is that part of my foreordained mission from our pre-existent and premortal life was that I needed to share my witness and my testimony about things of the last days to help my family, my loved ones, and any of other family members or God's children, brothers and sisters here on the earth that are willing and able to listen, to kind of serve as a voice of warning and to witness and testify of God's plan of happiness and redemption for us, and then also just some of the things that are coming prior to the second coming of our Savior Jesus Christ.
All right, very good. Well, we are going to talk about all that kind of stuff today. Now, just a little note, we will not be taking live calls on the air, except for Julie, of course, who is live. But we will be entertaining your questions if you have them. But I would rather have you email them to me at smitten@pmt.org, or you may text them to me at... I forgot the number. 862-KBAR. 862-KBAR. Either one of those will get to us, then we will forward those questions on to Julie. Is that all right to you?
That sounds fine. I just want to make it clear that if I'm able to answer them, I will. And what I mean by able is sometimes I don't know the answer, and other times for lack of a better word, I really don't have permission from the Lord to discuss certain topics. So as long as your listeners and you are very clear on that and aware of that, I'm not going to try to be difficult, but I have very, very clear boundaries that the Lord's given me as far as things I can and can't talk about and how much detail I'll go into. So
okay, very good.
I'm going to put that out there.
Well, before we get started on the near-death experience itself and some of the things that you saw, tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Julie Rowe.
Well, anyone that knows me well knows that I love people. I'm very much a people person, although I don't really like attention drawn to myself. It's not a comfortable thing for me to be on a radio show. Some of your listeners may have heard the other 3 interviews I've done on Mills Crenshaw and can attest to the fact that the first time I was on his show, I really didn't want to be on there, although I know that it is part of the Lord's plan. So I'm grateful to you for creating a venue for this to help spread some of this message. And so I really am not very comfortable talking about myself, but since you've asked, I will try to do that without being too difficult for you.
All right.
I am a mother and wife of 3 children. I have 2 teenage boys and a daughter who's in elementary school, and then my husband and I have been married a little over 18 and a half years. So happily married and grateful for the family that I have. They've put up with a lot over the last decade, actually more than a decade now, with my health issues and dealing with the trials and adversities that have come our way. And they're kind of ongoing. I think anyone who's gone through health issues can relate to that, especially if you've had a situation where you've been close to death or have had an experience passing to the other side. It's no easy thing to kind of be at this point, and it's very surreal for me. I look back over the last decade or so, and just literally thousands of miracles that have happened in my life to get to this point. Healing miracles, as well as just the many tender mercies that the Lord has seen fit to help me and my family along the way. And I I have multiple times a day where I sit back and I'm just in awe at His majesty and His power and His ability to guide us in our lives as we allow Him to. And there have been times in my life when I've I don't really have the great description for this, but have not really always maybe agreed or liked God's plan for me. I had didn't have the clarity and understanding that I have now, and that is that things that have happened to me in my life, like all of us, we have tragedies, we have heartaches, we have sometimes traumas and other things that happen to us that are very, very difficult, and we question or we wonder why it is that God would allow such things to happen, and sometimes we wonder if He's even the one causing them. And I have since come to learn that not only does He have a beautiful plan of salvation, exaltation, and redemption for each and every one of us individually that's tailored specifically to us and our needs, but we were part of helping design that plan, not the grand plan, but the individual plan that He has for us, in being able to help us know what it was we were going to need to go through here on the earth, which is just a small moment in time in the eternities, to help us become who He knows we can become, with the ultimate goal being that we return to Him. And so, taking all of that into account, it's really transformed me and continues to transform me and change me in my perspectives in how I deal with the trials that come into my life and have come into my life. And, times when I have felt victimized and realized that ultimately, when it's all said and done, if we allow it to, even those very awful things that happen to us and happen to people on this planet can be for our learning and our good. And it's hard sometimes for me to think that way, but it does give me great hope and great peace to be able to have that perspective as I look around at the wickedness that is on this planet and the atrocities that have happened on the earth throughout all of history. And that applies with my life today. There are trials that I'm dealing with right now that are not much different than the trials many other people face, whether it's health trials or relationship issues or whatever it may be, And so I'm just grateful for a very loving Father in heaven who knows us so well, and He knows us better than we know ourselves, and He gives us opportunities to learn and grow, and that He loves us not only in spite of our weaknesses, but often because of them. And I look at who He provided as my husband, how that happened so many years ago. I won't go into detail how we met, but who He is and His character and His faithfulness, and He is literally just a mighty warrior. And being able to stand by my side through all of this, when I know that there are many, many guys out there that probably wouldn't have done the same thing.
Sure.
To stick by my side through just even the health issues that I'm dealing with, let alone supporting me in this mission that I'm supposed to do where I'm supposed to then go public and speak about my experience to spread a message of light and truth.
Well, let's talk about that experience a little bit now. Back in 2004, you came down with an illness that was initially, well, you didn't really think it was all that bad when you first started out, but it eventually ended up sending you to the hospital. Tell us a little bit about your near-death experience.
Well, so I'm going to sum it up because there were so many other things going on. I'd had some health issues that I was dealing with previously, but I did contract a virus that ended up basically being the tipping point, and it centralized in my liver and then went systemic. And as a result of that, I did, in a weakened state, pass to the other side for a couple of days. That's according to hospital records. And then I was tested for all kinds of things because my system was so out of whack. You can imagine anyone who's worked in the medical field or has a basic understanding of the human body, the liver is a pretty important organ.
Sure.
And I was told, that I have had everything from liver cancer to Lyme disease and, half a dozen or so autoimmune diseases as a result. And so there's been a lot that I've gone through and that I continue to go through. I'm still working on health issues because it's day and night. It's like there's no comparison with where I was 10 years ago and where I am today. But I still have a lot that we're working on. And, why things happen, sometimes we don't know. I asked why for many, many years, even though the Lord had given me this experience. I still, when I would have these terrible bouts of illness and be in bed, unable to even get out of bed, have these very clear memories of what I had experienced. And then with that came, I think there's an important thing I need to mention here is that there are people that can identify this. Anyone who's had a near-death experience, it's not uncommon for people to then, after that experience, come back and deal with some depression. And that's been a very real part of my struggle as well, is that after coming back to a very, very sick body and being very, very sick for a very, very long time, dealing with the memories that I had of being completely pain-free in every way and of the beautiful, lovely place that we have in the spirit world provided for us, knowing that, knowing what I was missing out on. And that's not to say that I didn't love my husband and my children and my family and my life on earth. It's just I have dealt with both some depression and some anxiety. The depression, I think, for the most part, dealing with the constant pain as well as some of those memories of kind of longing for home, for lack of a better word. And then the anxiety just because of what I was shown and having a hard time at times going to bed at night because as I would lay in bed at night just thinking about what I had been shown, what I knew was coming, and then as time went on, seeing more and more of those things come to fruition so that there came a point in time that there was no doubt in my mind that I would live to see and face the very things that I had been told that I would face.
All right. Now
and
these...
So I think it's important to let people know that because many of us struggle with those kinds of things, and that's an aspect that I don't think a lot of people maybe think about realistically when you go through something like this.
I have actually interviewed a lot of near-death experience people here on the air, and that's pretty universal, really. This feeling of not really wanting to return to the body, and once you do so, it feels heavy, it feels cumbersome. It is in some ways, it is a lack of freedom that you feel oftentimes.
It feels very limiting.
And limiting, that's a good way of putting it. So we've had this experience. Well, not me, but I mean we've talked to these people that have had these experiences before. Now, back in 2004, Julie, you did pass from this world through the veil into the other world, where you stayed for some time and you experienced a lot of different things. Now, as you left this sphere of existence and went to the next, what was that transition like?
Due to the personal and sacred nature of that, I'm not going to go into great detail, but I will just say that for the ease in communication, I found myself, after my spirit was somewhat disconnected from my body, I did find myself rise higher and higher. And I talk about this in the book, so I won't go into a whole lot of detail, but I found myself in a beautiful green field, and I was there, I don't even know how long, because it didn't seem like long, before I was greeted by a gentleman named John, who let me know who he was. In addition, he let me know that he was one of my distant ancestors. And we talked for quite some time. We went on a walk, and we went to a lake, and stood by the lake, and had, I don't really know how long, because from all of my experience, according to the hospital records, I was gone for a couple of days. And so that's the current understanding that I have is a couple of days. What that is in spirit world time, I really don't know, but I can tell you that in 5 minutes you can learn a whole lot, and you can communicate so much easier and so much better than we can here on the earth. So I learned a lot. I learned about the pre-existence and some of the war in heaven. I shouldn't say learn. I was reminded of it because I was shown scenes from the pre-existence of myself, my husband, my family, some of my loved ones, and that was a huge part of the first segment of my experience before I was then, counseled by John and talked to him about some of why I was there in that experience that I was having, and it was agreed upon that at that point in time I was still kind of fighting the, you can't stay, you're only here temporarily, you can't stay, you need to go back, and I just, at that point, feeling the freedom and, again, being pain-free and the love that I was absolutely encompassed, it just encompassed everything. I really struggled to want to go back, and then, I was shown, and then we also traveled some distances to different places. I don't talk about that in the book, but that gave me a greater understanding about the earth and what's going on in the earth, and particularly with my husband, my family, and my kids. At that point in time, then I knew that my husband really did need me, and my children really did need me, and I needed to go back. At that point in time, in 2004, my daughter was an 8.5-month-old baby. She was a nursing baby, and because of my hospital stay, she was in great pain and agony emotionally and physically. She didn't want to eat. And I was shown that I could see she was crying, and quite angry at the situation, actually, that I was gone, and she was afraid, and not understanding what was happening to her. And then I had a 3-year-old son and a 5-year-old son, and so they were young, and when I had the clarity that, really my life was not over, and there was a great deal more, and I was shown much more of what I needed to do, then that kind of gave me the courage, I guess you could say, or the conviction that I agreed upon. You're right, okay, I do need to go back. And then I was able to just kind of enjoy the rest of my time there, knowing that it wasn't going to be forever, but that I could stay for a little while.
Okay.
So.
Well, we've got to take a commercial break here for just a moment, Julie, and we will be back in just a moment. All right, we are back again on Radioactive. Our guest is Julie Rowe today. We're grateful to have her on the program. Once again, folks, if you have any questions for her, you can text me those at 862-KBAR, or you can email those to me at smitten@pmt.org. Either way, that will get through to us today. We will not be taking questions live on the air, but if you send them to me, I will forward them on to her. Julie, thanks for holding on through the break.
Sure, thanks.
All right, now, Julie, in 2004, you did have this near-death experience. You went through the veil into the other realm there, the spirit world. Can you describe for us, and I know that, the English language and human language is insufficient to these sorts of descriptions, but give it your best shot. Tell us what it looked like over there.
You're absolutely correct. That is so hard to do, and I feel so ill-equipped. The word exquisite comes to mind. was as if everything was alive. It was alive. It was and able to communicate. The most beautiful flowers and trees and shrubbery and grass and variations of beautiful creations, and as if all of them were able to communicate. You know, I know it's been said before, but kind of telepathically, but it's much more than that. And then from a transportation standpoint, initially when I was with John, we walked, and then once we left the lake area, in the distance I saw various cities, cities, but more of a village-type cities. You know, they didn't have huge skyrise buildings or anything. And we entered into some of those, came upon one in particular. Initially we started walking to it, and we came to just kind of a stone wall, and we went through into this little area. I saw some little country houses and things, one in particular that really stood out, and I saw a dog kind of running in the yard, and I talk about that in the book, so I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but just to give an idea, when we came into this city, and by then John and I had communicated quite a bit, and it was as if he knew my thoughts and I knew his without really having to use our mouths to vocalize it, although there was kind of all of it going on.
Just to clarify a little bit here, now John is the person who met you on the other side, sort of a guide, right?
Yes.
And he was an ancestor of yours?
Yes.
Okay.
This is an ancestor. Uh-huh.
All right, continue.
As we came into this city, and I asked him essentially what they were, and he explained. It was explained to me. It was like he explained it to me, but it was also made known to me at the same time. So it's kind of hard to explain how that is. It was like knowledge just flooded into my mind.
Uh-huh.
And so some of it actually came from him, and it was understood, and other information that was given to me was kind of a universal knowledge that was there as being part of that realm, if that makes sense. So,
okay.
Anyway, and then I just have very clear memories of the beautiful architecture, flowers. I've always loved flowers, and there were just so many different varieties of flowers and colors. And this might sound kind of weird, but it's like they were talking to me.
Right.
And telling me how much they loved me and how much they loved being there and how much they loved the Lord. I mean, everything was just love. Everything was love. If there's one word that I can describe about that part of the spirit realm, was love. And there were different places in the spirit world. I don't go into a lot of detail about some of the areas that weren't as pleasant, because my focus and my mission is to testify of the greatness of the plan and the beauty that the Lord has awaiting for us, and not the things that are not of the light. And so I did experience more than what I talk about in the book, but the focus needs to be on the beautiful things. But I want to make it very clear that there are, I guess, varying degrees or levels of light within the spirit realms, and lots of them.
Yeah.
And I was able to get quite a view or experience several of those. And in these cities of light, being that this was the first place we came upon, it was in somewhat of a spirit paradise. It was referred to as spirit paradise, but in a different language. It was made known to me it was the Adamic language, which was the language that is spoken in the spirit world, that was spoken in the pre-existence, and that was the language that Adam had when he was first put upon the earth. So the Adamic language, and so the buildings, those that were labeled, I remember different office-type buildings or for business purposes. One was the office of the president, and that was a kind of a leadership-type position. And then, like a library and other buildings that were being utilized, and then there were residences. And some of the residences had names of families on them as well. And they were of the business buildings, those were in the Adamic language. So I was able to understand them, although I recognized that they were not in the English language.
Sure.
And they were not of a language that we had on the earth.
Gotcha. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I saw just beautiful, beautiful creations. The flowers just really, and the landscaping in this particular city that I first went to was just beautiful, very well done, and the people were just very friendly and kind, and it was nice.
Now, the people that you saw here, these were obviously the spirits of people who had passed on, and what were they doing?
Well, several of them were my family members. That was made very clear to me, and they were familiar to me. Not all of them. There were people that I saw that I didn't recognize or remember, but there were many that I saw that were... they were very busy. Some of them were on assignments going to different realms in the spirit world doing the share work. Some were doing genealogy work, family history work. Some were playing with children. Others were teaching. Everything from, kids that were, 7, 8, 9 years old type age to, and some might have been younger than that, but what I really remember were the kids that were 7 or 8 or 9, 10 years old, because I saw several of those, like in a playground type setting. And then, actually there were some university type settings, that's the easiest way to describe it.
Places of learning.
Yeah, places of learning, lots of places of learning. And I would say the average individual there, was anywhere from 25 to 30 years old as far as how they looked. Some
Sure.
looked younger than that, although there were some that were older than that. But it was made kind of clear to me that some of those people, I guess, appeared to me at that age so that I would recognize them for whatever reason. So.
Okay, very good. Now, as you made your way through this the spirit world, and with John as your guide, you were also shown some historical, biblical type scenes as well of mankind's past. Which of those things really impressed you the most?
That's hard to say. The first thing that comes to mind is the life of Christ and his death and resurrection being the most important event in all of the history of mankind and in all of the universe, being the Savior of the universe and of the world. And so there's that, but then, you have, I don't go into detail about seeing the historical figures, things from like the life of Napoleon and some of the Egyptian history and going clear back to Joan of Arc and the Middle Ages and things like that, because I was given quite a bit of information about that. Some of those things, some of those individuals I actually met, and others I was just shown kind of in vision of, but not vision like you're watching. It was more of as if I was there in a 3D participating kind of way.
I see. Okay.
Because that's what the Book of Life is. If you were to actually open a Book of Life, it's not like you're just reading a book.
Right. But you also saw people like Moses, Daniel, David, those kinds of folks.
Right.
Too,
if you look in the scriptures, and yes, and many of the miracles that are talked about, when you're talking about Father Adam and Mother Eve, some of the choices that Cain made, and the results or the consequences of his choices, and the prophets and apostles in the Book of Mormon. I only highlight a few of those that I was shown in the Book of Greater Tomorrow, but it hopefully gives the reader an idea. And talking about Noah and what a powerful man he was and still is, and the role that he plays in the spirit world, as well as all the past prophets and apostles that are written in the scriptures. And of course we know that there are others that have passed on that are not yet made known to us, but the ones that I do remember are Elijah, Noah, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Adam, and then modern day prophets and apostles. pioneers, early pioneers, from those that settled in the Americas originally, as well as those that later, came as a result of joining the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, modern-day pioneers. And that makes sense to me, too, because I have pioneer ancestry, and so
Sure.
A lot of my heritage is there, too. So
Now, I'm a direct descendant of Hiram Smith. Did you see him?
I did not meet him personally, but I was shown things about him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to talk about that one of these days. All right, but that's probably going to be boring to our listeners, so we'll move on. Now, we've got to take a commercial break. When we come back again, we're going to be gone for about 4 minutes here, but when we come back, I want to ask you about some of the, and we're going to kind of start diving into, if you will, some of the things that you saw concerning our day. So we will be back with more in just a moment. Don't go away. We are talking with Julie Rowe. Oh, by the way, your first book is A Greater Tomorrow, correct?
That's right.
And
came out in May of this year.
Yeah, and your second book, which I just read a few minutes ago, and I can't remember the title. What was it?
The time is now.
The time is now, right?
Came out November 3rd.
And both of those are
now.
available on Amazon. They are both available in ebook. You can get both of them also here locally at the Book Plaza. They have both of those in stock.
And Siegel Books, if you have Siegel Books out there.
Siegel Books. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're advertised in both their November and December flyers. If you have out-of-town family that does not have a Siegel book, you can have the flyer sent to them, across the country, and they can order online.
All right, very good. All right, Julie, hang on. We'll be back with you in just a moment, all right? We are back once again, ladies and gentlemen, on Radioactive. Welcome back to the program. Julie Rowe is our guest today, and she has authored a couple of great books regarding her spirit, or her trip into the spirit world, I should say, in 2004, and subsequent experiences after that. Now, Julie, I understand from people that have had these kinds of experiences before, when you come back, you don't come back alone. You bring part of that with you. Have you found that your connection to the spirit world has been more or less permanently enhanced?
I guess the easiest way to describe that is yes, the veil's pretty thin for me comparatively. I had experiences as a child and growing up, a few different experiences and some things happening in my young adult and adult years prior to this, but nothing even close to what I've experienced in the last 10 years. So.
But these things continue to unfold. It's not just one experience, right?
Right. Yeah, I've always experienced at different points in my life some type of, I don't know how people, everybody has a different view or even different wording for this, but for lack of knowing how to clarify, I've always been a dreamer or had dreams and some visions, although I didn't know that all the time that that's what was going on.
Right.
I didn't ever really have anybody that I talked to about it until later on in my when I met my husband in my adult years in my marriage. So I've had experiences like that. The first time I actually was shown things about, for instance, like the Salt Lake Valley and some of the destruction that will happen there was in the fall of my junior year of high school in 1989. I was living out in the D.C. area, and so I had experiences like that. But then since having my experience in 2004, I guess you could say I have a lot more clarity, and as time goes on, I have more and more clarity and more clear recollection, and most of the time, so I have seen both spirits of the light and the dark on several occasions, but sometimes I smell them, sometimes I see them, usually feel them most of the time. So I don't know if that's what you mean.
Well, yeah.
We're each given spiritual gifts. It talks about that in scriptures, that we're born in every single one of us with at least one spiritual gift, and that we're to seek after even the best gifts. These were not gifts that I initially sought after, at least that I knew of. But I have since and been able to kind of get more clarity and discern and learn a lot more. So
okay.
To try and understand what's going on around me.
All right, very good. Now, one of the other things that we hear about oft times, well, not every single time, but oft times from people, is a meeting with the Savior himself. Did you have that experience?
I did.
Is that something you can share with us?
No, just due to the private and personal and sacred nature of that, I don't want to share that.
Okay, well, that's fine.
Other than to testify that I know He exists, that I know He's real, that He's resurrected, and He is our Lord and Savior.
Okay,
and that He will come again.
And that's fine. That's good. I don't want to press you into something that you're not comfortable with. But so that was part of this experience then, and
it was.
The personal nature of this. The do you get the sense, perhaps, that everyone's experience in the spirit world is a little different, maybe depending on what they bring with them when they come?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's individually tailored, and so it makes sense to me that other people see or experience similar things, and also that they have different experiences. They'll see different people based on their ancestral line and based on where they are in their lives as far as the amount of light and knowledge that they have at that time, and whatever the Lord's plan is for them and their purpose for having that experience, and what they need to do when they come back. And for me, I was told very specifically that until my story was written down and basically till we got to this point, or after that first book was written, that I was not to research or read about anybody else's experiences, with the exception of just a few. And so, for the most part, it wasn't until after A Greater Tomorrow was out in May that I even read other books. And to this day, I've only read about a half a dozen, and that's so that my story could be authentic, and it could be mine and mine alone, and not convoluted by reading or hearing about somebody else's. So, with the exception of a few, for the most part, I really still don't even know what most people have experienced. I've never studied NDEs. I haven't read books about NDEs. I read one in college in 1991 or 92, and then nothing until last year.
Okay, very good. All right. Well,
I think I read Life After Life sometime around 2006 or 7 or 8 or something like that.
Right. Yeah,
so I couldn't even tell you what that's about, but I do remember that book.
I do. I don't know if that I've read that one either, to be honest with you. All right. Well, Julie, we're out of time for this hour, so we're going to take a break. We will be back right after the news at the top of the hour, and then you and I will dive into this. And I know everybody is really interested in the warnings for our time, or what you saw concerning our day in the very near future. And so we're going to dive into that full steam when we get back, okay? Our guest today is Julie Rowe as we commence hour number 2 of Radioactive today. Julie experienced a near-death experience and took a trip into the spirit world back in 2004, and she is here to share that experience with us. Let me ask you a question about that, if you will, Julie. And by the way, thanks for hanging on through the break. Why me? Why this show?
You're funny. I think I told you why, but apparently we need to let your listeners know. I've been contacted by seven different people all over the globe, actually, And at least at this point in time, I have been shown and specifically told that the way I am to discern where and how I'm to go about spreading this message is through the Spirit, and that individuals will be prompted to contact me, and from those individuals, then the Spirit will kind of direct me what show I'm supposed to be on, which one I'm not, what city I'm supposed to go to, what venue, those kind of things. So that's how it's worked so far, and my understanding from what I was told and have been told many times since is that that's how it's supposed to happen. So I'm not to do any self-promoting. I won't do any self-promoting. This is not about me. This is about a message. I'm just a simple messenger trying to do my small part, like we're each supposed to do, and the Lord is directing His kingdom. And so as He does that, and individuals like you or Mel Crenshaw or other people, those that have hosted speaking engagements and other things, I just need to put it out there. I have not and will not self-promote, that this is coming about as people are directed by the Spirit to contact me, and then from those, then I prayerfully discern. And at least up to this point in time, I recognized all the names of the individuals and have actually been shown different venues. So that's been a really faith-promoting and faith-building experience for me, and it's what has given me the courage, I guess, and the conviction that I'm supposed to go on your show or any of the others, is knowing that that's part of the plan, and I agreed to it, and so I need to put my own insecurities and all that aside and just kind of do what I need to do.
Okay. So would it be safe to say then that the Lord has someone or some spirits in our audience that need to hear this message?
Absolutely. Nothing is coincidental. I learned that long ago. It's not coincidental where we're born and what families we're born into or what part of the world, and it's not coincidental where we end up and who we meet. And so it's not coincidental that I'm on your show today, or that whoever's listening is listening at this time.
Okay.
Whether they catch 10 minutes of it or they catch the full 3 hours.
Very good. All right, now Shelley has a question, and we will get to that question a little bit later on, Shelley, so stay tuned. Right now I want to dive into what I think most people are the most concerned about, obviously, and that is you saw visions, or vision may not even be the right word for what you experienced, but you were able to see things that were going to happen, that are happening in our day, the cause of those things, and where this is going to take us in the near future. Am I correct?
That's correct. Much of what's talked about in the Scriptures already. The Scriptures are a type for our day, and every Scripture story that's in there is in there for a reason. There were many, many records that were kept, and the Lord decided to preserve the ones that we have because they're exactly what we need right now, and they are written for our day. And so if you look at the Scriptures and you look at the patterns there and you look at the stories that are told, they're all examples of what we have and will increasingly experience going forward in the future. And so it's not new information. I'm just another witness of that, and I'm another person who has been called upon to testify of the truth and the divinity in the Scriptures, and of the words of the prophets and apostles that will, in fact, come to pass. Okay.
Now, can you tell us how did these visions of what will shortly come to pass, how were these opened up to you?
I don't know how to describe that. I was shown them several times. The Lord works in patterns there, so I'm not going to go into detail there because that's of a personal and sacred nature as to how He works. But I will say that I was shown them many times during my experience. Then I had another experience, again, that I don't really write about, just very briefly, where I was given kind of synopsis to make sure that I had clarity and I was on board with what had been given to me and my assignment. And then over the last 10 years or so, the Lord's given me, I guess you could say, like reminder dreams and visions, so that I've had more clarity and being able to remember exactly what it was I was shown. So, if you're shown something 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 times, it's pretty clear in your mind. And,
sure.
And if you've been shown that hundreds of times, it's really, really clear. And so while I actually had my experience on the other side, I was towards the end of my, for lack of a better word, tour. That's the only word I can think of in the English language, but that's not the word that was given to me there. But towards the end, I had a life review, and then I was shown through the window of heaven. And that's where I had the majority of it, although I had been given bits and pieces of it throughout my experience in the library and in the Book of Records and in different buildings and different places that we went during that experience. I very lightly touch on the most basic details of my experience in the book because that's what I have permission from the Lord to talk about due to the personal and sacred nature of what I experienced, but also because that's what the world is able to read and accept. And most of what I experienced was just for me. It's not to be spread out and given publicly. And so I had some of them were just as if things were opened up into my mind. Sometimes it was on a screen. Sometimes it was interactive, as if I was part of it. The majority of it, that's how it happened, as if I was there.
And so you were able.
So I had different views of it. I had everything from an aerial view from outer space, to being in the sky, to being just above an individual, to being right next to them, and I was given those views to, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So it wasn't just like I was watching a TV program or a movie.
Okay, very good. Now, you mention in your second book, which I read last night, by the way, you mentioned that when you saw these things, you paid special attention to yourself, your husband, and your children, and you noted that your children did not seem to be too much older than they are right now.
Right.
So
I knew that there would be some calamities and other things that would happen between 2004 and roughly 2013, because I knew that we had approximately 9 Earth years. That's what I was told, approximately 9 Earth years until I was to start opening my mouth about my story. And up until that time, that for the most part I was to keep silent, other than with a few very, very close friends and parents and a couple of siblings, and even that I didn't go into a lot of detail. Of course, my husband knew, my kids have known. So other than that, but to actually go public, I was told approximately 9 Earth years. The Lord's timing is always perfect, and so there are reasons, as to the timing of why now. And that was a year ago, last fall. So a year ago in September, that I was given that. And so, the Lord doesn't tell us more than we need to know when we need to know it and how we need to know it, and that includes, those things that are for our further light and knowledge, for our understanding. When we need to know it, He tells us that. And so I didn't know exactly how it was going to come about. I just knew that I was shown my publisher, Chad Daybell, and I was shown his company, and I kept having these flashbacks or memories to my experience, and I would pray about that, and I'd go to the temple, and I'd ask for clarity, and every time the answer was yes, yes, yes. And then last end of September, first part of October, then I was shown both in dreams and in vision more about that and how it would come about, and told that after the first of the year I would be contacted by Chad and Spring Creek Publishing, that I was not to contact them in any way, but that he would find me. And there's a whole amazing story behind that anyway. So I have people that have contacted me asking for help in writing or publishing a book, or asking, how to go about that. And honestly, to this day, I don't know. I have no idea, because I am not a typical case. I was brought together through divine intervention, really, and so Chad, has his side of it, where he was inspired and prompted to contact me, and when the time was right, then Lord brought us together, and that's how those books have gone too. I started writing the first book in the first week of March and finished it. It went to press the third week of April, and the second book started writing August 7th, and it went to press in early October. And so I guess it was actually went to the printer on October 15th, but we had most of it written by October 3rd, and we just knew that there were some general conference quotes that we were going to add into the book at the last minute. And so not a lot of time there. If you look at 6 weeks for the first book and 7.5 weeks for the second book, and anyone who has ever written anything substantial knows that that's pretty quick to write a book.
It is.
And there's no way it could have happened had I not had divine intervention from the Lord.
All right, well, let's get into what you saw here now. When you started seeing these visions of the future, let's just keep it simple. What did you see?
I had to pause, because I'm like, where do you start? I mean, where do you start when you've been shown from the creation through into the millennium?
Yeah.
Really, that's what I saw, and I'm not saying I saw everything, but I saw a lot, and I saw major things, and what I am supposed to testify of from here going forward is that we have the days of tribulation that are soon going to be upon us, that are talked about in the Holy Scriptures, and that the forces of darkness have not yet utilized all of their powers and their weapons, and that they're just kind of holding back and will unleash those in the coming years. But that's the same with the powers of light as well. And make no mistake, the Lord's team, the Lord's side, the Lord's warriors have, will, are, and always will be victorious, no matter how it seems in the world around us, and the illusions. Satan loves to create mirages, and he likes to make us think that it's a losing battle, and that he's got control of the whole earth. It is true that there is great darkness upon the earth right now. The sins of the world have weighed heavily on the earth since the beginning of time, and the earth was cleansed in the days of Noah, and we're getting ready for another cleansing. And so when I say that, we're talking about a cleansing in preparation for the return of the Savior Jesus Christ that's prophesied in the Scriptures, that there will be a second coming, and I am to witness and testify that that event will in fact happen. I don't know when. Not even the angels know exactly when that will happen, but I have been shown that it will happen, and I know it without a doubt. And so everything going forward is to help prepare us for that, to cleanse our hearts, minds, and bodies for that, and to prepare ourselves for our Savior's return. And there's a lot that has to happen between now and then. Okay,
very good. Now, you say the days of tribulation are upon us. Can you lay out for us what some of these tribulations are going to be?
They haven't yet started, officially, although it sure seems like that when we get so beat up, day in, day out from everything that we're trying to do. But in the near future, those will be upon us, and part of that is what's talked about. John, the Revelator, was specifically called upon by the Lord to record these events in the book of Revelations. So I encourage people to study the book of Revelations. You can read about it in Isaiah, you can read about it in some of it in Joel and Daniel, and several of the other books throughout the Bible, as well as the Book of Mormon. Again, they're a type to our theme, so you're talking about worldwide warfare, war here, invasion of foreign troops here on American soil, and that's not far off. And we're talking about chemical, biological, and nuclear war, and as well as plagues, diseases, famines, droughts, pestilence, all the nitty-gritties that none of us want to think about. I don't like to talk about them, and those are the very things when I talk about having a hard time sleeping, that have weighed heavily on my heart, knowing that it is all going to come to pass. The words of the prophets do come to pass, and the Lord keeps all of His promises. The happy side of that is that when we get through that and all the yucky stuff, then it's not going to be too long until we have the total cleansing of the earth and the Lord's return. And so, kind of keeping an eye on faith and having good attitude about all of it as we go through the tribulations, knowing that it's all part of the plan, and it's not fun, and it's going to be very, 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 very difficult. But in the end, it's worth it.
Sort of like, something I've never experienced, but you have, and many have, and that's like childbirth. The whole childbirth thing, not very pleasant, but the rewards you get at the end are great, right?
I would imagine so. I was one of those individuals that was sick the whole 9 months, and then I had 3 beautiful children, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Exactly.
They are absolutely a blessing in my life. But, we have to go through hard things to get the rewards.
Well, I think the Scriptures even compare the rewards that the Lord has with us with a woman in travail or a woman in tribulation, referring to childbirth. So, now, Julie, let's talk a little bit more about some of these trials and tribulations. You mentioned that there will be foreign troops. You also mentioned a lot of natural disasters. Can you lay out for us what kind of natural disasters you were able to see?
Exactly what's talked about in the Scriptures and the prophets and apostles have testified of, and that is earthquakes, tornadoes, snowstorms, rain, hurricanes, tropical storms, tsunamis, everything that's gone on around the world that we see increasingly so, but it'll be on mass scale like we've never experienced on the earth before. There'll be and we'll have, we already see it, the weather patterns changing and extreme temperatures, cold, harsh winters that we had last year, and increasingly so. In the days ahead, we're going to have some changes in weather and unexpected things. You hear about like a random tornado, or it seems random, in a place where they've never had a tornado before, or a volcano that erupts where people, haven't had an active volcano erupt in hundreds of years. So volcanic eruptions, and basically everything. And what I saw was that when it really does happen, it's the best word for it is it's as if the earth has erupted in chaos. And it happens on such a mass scale, and one right after the other, and often simultaneously, so it's kind of hard to pick it apart and figure out when exactly, a certain earthquake happened, and then another earthquake happened, because they happen so closely together and sometimes right at the same time. And that coincides also pretty closely with the foreign troop invasions of the Russians, Chinese, and some of the North Koreans that come into our coastal areas. Both, I saw mostly the Chinese troops coming in on the California and western coast, although they do come in other places, and then the other foreign troops. But we've got foreign troops already here in the country. So, and everything we see going on, one of the things about conspiracies is, and you'll read about them in the Book of Mormon, you read about them in the Bible, actually, conspiracies have been going on since the beginning of time with Cain. That was part of what caused the problems with Cain and those who followed him, were conspiracies which come directly from the adversary. And those same oaths have been passed down, and they're inspired by the evil one. And so we have that going on in our world now, but the thing is, their days are numbered, and there are conspiring men. One of the things I think is important to say is that there are actually conspiring men who are conspiring, making up conspiracy theories that are absolutely so far-fetched, outlandish, and are not true, as a way to try to make all of the people who believe in any conspiracy theories seem crazy.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
That's one of their tactics.
That's a well-known one, actually. Anyway, we're going to have to take a break here for just a minute, so we're up against the clock here. So we're going to take a commercial break. We're going to be back with more in a moment. Julie Rowe is our guest. When we get back, we're going to talk about earthquakes along the Wasatch Front coming up, so don't go away. We have an eyewitness to events of the future. Her name is Julie Rowe, and she has written 2 books on the subject that have come out over the past year. And Julie, what are the names of those, and where can people get them again?
The first book is called The Greater Tomorrow, My Journey Beyond the Veil. That's available on Amazon, Siegel bookstores, and bookstores throughout the country. And then the second one is The Time Is Now, and that just came out November 3rd. It's also available in Siegel Books and online, Amazon, and bookstores throughout the country.
Yeah.
Too many to name.
Both
I don't
of
even know the names of all of them. But,
both of those books,
those are probably the easiest places to find. And you can just Google my name, and that might help you.
Sure. Both of those books are available here locally at the Book Plaza. As a matter of fact, I was talking to one of the ladies over there at the Book Plaza, and they said they can't keep your book in. They've run through a couple of shipments. So we know that they are available there as well. So you can get them over at the Book Plaza, 220 West 11th Street in Burley. Okay, Julie. Now, let's talk a little about some of these natural disasters. One of the weird things, and I don't know, this is kind of frightening to me. Okay, is that I have, starting off with Gail Smith, who, by the way, was supposed to be our guest last week at this time, but she got sick, and so she asked if we could do it. Maybe next week, maybe tomorrow, I don't know. But she's been a frequent guest on the program, and she is someone who has seen dreams of large earthquakes along the Wasatch Front. We have read of other experiences and interviewed at least 2 other people who have had near-death experiences who speak of the same large earthquakes along the Wasatch Front. One of the interesting things that you said in your book, which Gail Smith also said almost exactly word for word the same way you said it. So first of all, I got to ask, do you know Gail?
No, actually, I don't know anything about Gail.
Okay, great. Well, that's good. Because one of the things that she said and one of the things that you said is just extraordinarily interesting to me, because almost word for word the same thing. That there will be a large earthquake in the near future along the Wasatch Front, which will be extraordinarily destructive, and there'll be a lot of death and destruction that accompanies this. But in the aftermath of the earthquake, people will actually react with a certain sense of relief, saying, we survived the big one. Now, it's weird that you put that exact same thing in your book, and those are almost word for word the things that Gail Smith said that she saw.
Oh, really?
So, in fact, people will say, my gosh, we dodged a bullet on that.
A substantial earthquake that hits and does a lot of damage, but it's nothing compared to what's coming.
Right. Then there will be worse after that. But so tell us, first of all, what you saw about the Wasatch Front and earthquakes.
I'm going to narrow it down really quickly because there was so much that I saw, and I don't. The Lord's been very, very strict with me that I am not to put people into panic and fear, because panic and fear and anxiety is not of the Lord, and it can put people in a state of shock rather than waking them up and putting them into action. So we need to focus on having faith that the Lord has a plan and doing what we can to prepare spiritually and temporally, specifically spiritually, so that when these things happen, we're not caught unaware, although, we don't know exactly when they're going to happen, but knowing that it's going to be okay, and that that there is going to be terrible devastation and death and destruction with the ones that come before, but the ones that come after, actually, I was shown those happen after the members are gathered into places of refuge. And so maybe for those that aren't aware of that, you can read the books. There's other information there that have to do with places of safety that are and will be prepared for the members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and those who would like to go with them to these camps. But the major earthquake happens afterwards, and the one or two before, a couple before, but really that big one that happens before the super big one is kind of a tender mercy. It's a little bit of a wake-up call for people, and it is interesting because I was shown that there are people that wake up and go, oh, wow, I better get my house in order. And then there are others that kind of do exactly what you said, which is kind of like, well, we can rest easy now and go back to our life of eat, drink, and be merry because we've already kind of escaped the big one.
Yeah, and that's really
and I've seen water coming up from the ground, the roads. Let me focus on the one that happens after the places of safety, because those that are gathered at places of safety, maybe a little motivator for them to make sure that they're listening and following the prophets and apostles when we're invited to go to these places. Because what I was shown was such destruction and terror. Fires everywhere, roads, highways, streets completely impassable, houses, cars that just absolutely swallowed up into the earth. The path from Utah County into Salt Lake County or valley there, completely impassable. Houses falling off mountains with mudslides and from the earthquakes. Point of the mountain completely impassable. Vegator Highway torn up. So, the lakes flooding and overflowing. It's horrendous. It's horrendous. And that's not the only place in the country that will happen. That's kind of an example of some things that are going to happen across the world. Another one is after that, a huge earthquake that goes into Middle America, that goes from the Gulf of Mexico on up as far as the Great Lakes, with splintering earthquakes off of that. And there I saw the Mississippi River and the Missouri River, but Mississippi River flow backwards and flood the area.
All right. Now, the scriptures do talk of these kinds of things, and I know you refer people to go to the scriptures to look these up, but they do say wars and rumors of wars and great shakings of the earth and tempests and storms. And then it goes on to say, but these are the beginnings of sorrows, indicating that there's worse to come, right?
Right. And after the places of safety, when this big, let's just narrow it down to the Wasatch Front area there, after gathered place of safety and that really big one hits, it's not just one, but there's one huge one and then splinters and others that come after that. That's kind of the introduction to the years of sorrow, because right about that time we've got foreign troops that'll hit the soil, that'll be coming in, and then all of the volcanic eruptions and all the storms and tempests that will really start to rage. And so, it's even with what I've been shown and what I know to be true, it is still very surreal, it's very sobering, it's very hard for me to imagine that it's really, really going to happen.
Right.
Because I think we want to go into this place of denial because it's just scary and we don't want to think about the bad things, but recognizing that they will come to pass. And so we need to go from a place of fearing them and having anxiety to having faith that we can do what we need to do, and that wherever the Lord needs us, if it's on this side of the veil or the other side of the veil, wherever He needs us in His army, that we will be utilized. All
right, very good. Folks, if you have any questions for Julie, you can text me on my cell phone, which is 312-5227, or you can email me at stevesradio.com, or, by the way, I've put up on Facebook a little alert, if you're a Facebook friend of mine, that I am currently interviewing Julie. So if you want to put a question down in the comment section there, you can do that. I'll keep an eye on that as well. But there will be no live calls taken today. So those are the ways you can get your questions in if that's something that you want to do. All right. Well, let's talk about this now. You talked about foreign troops coming into the country. Will they initially, or was it your understanding that initially they would come in under the guise of helping to recover from a disaster?
Yeah, like pretending to be peacekeeping troops. It's all been planned. It's being planned. This has all been going on for decades, and so their ultimate goal though is to come in and control and dominate and take over. Population. I'll just say decrease the population, but preserve the land as much as possible. Keep as much as they can intact, so that they can just kind of take over, and to basically take away our lands and freedoms. Similar to what, again, is in the scriptures. If you look in the scriptures and take the accounts in the Book of Mormon and the pride cycle of the civilizations there, and you look at what happened there with the kingmen. I mean, how many times do we need to have examples in Scripture where you've got, you got the Gadianton robbers, and they've got somebody who's in charge of their government, and they utilize that individual until they don't need him anymore, and then one of his buddies takes him out so he can have control of the kingdom. And so it's not coincidental that those stories are in there for us.
These stories are as old as mankind, and one of the interesting things about looking at the future is if you know the past, you know how people react, and you know how people think, and you may think that you are different from the ancient Nephites or Israelites or something, but you're not that different. We're all
right.
We're all
something
the same.
That's coming to mind right now is if you want just a brief glimpse into what we might be headed into as far as some of the tribulations, read in the scriptures what happened after Christ was crucified during that 3 days.
Yeah.
And how the land was, with the storms and the tempests and the earthquakes and things that happened there, and the darkness that was upon the earth, and the mourning of the people and the anguish and their cries and all of that. It's very, very sobering. But again, it's not coincidental that that's what happened. That was part of it, and we will yet see that coming before Christ comes again.
Okay, very good. We do have a specific question that just came through on the Facebook feed here. Do you know anything at all about the southern Idaho areas specifically?
I know that there are a lot of places of refuge there. There's some very sacred ground out in that area. Obviously, anywhere where there are temples, those are designed and dedicated as places of refuge from the storms, and so those will be utilized. And then there's just several places around Rexburg, Rigby, Shelley, that area. So many places in Idaho that will be utilized. I know I've had a lot of people, dozens and dozens of people contact me from Idaho saying that they have had dreams, visions, things from their patriarchal blessings, some of them NDEs, other promptings and impressions from the Spirit that they have been feeling an urgency to prepare, either to relocate somewhere else or for people, as in lots and lots of people, to come to their homes and their land. I have to tell you that just me personally, and this is, I'm not claiming any special gifts or anything here, folks, so don't read into this anything, but I personally have received impressions that I am in the exact spot where I need to be, when the tribulations come. This is, we are uniquely geographically located in a place where you don't really go through here to get anywhere. You come here because you want to be here. We have naturally flowing springs, and we're surrounded by fertile farmland, and I've received the impression many times over the years that should the worst happen, that this is really where I need to be. I've shared this with my children, who live
a ways away, and I've told them, look, if something happens, this is home base central here. You need to make your way here.
Right.
Because this is,
Right, and I think it's important that people really pay attention to those promptings and impressions that they get, or however it is that the Spirit speaks to you, and learning first and foremost to discern how the Spirit speaks to you, so that you recognize that it's the Lord, and that it's not somebody else, not an angel of the dark who's a fallen angel who's imitating as an angel of the light,
sure,
giving you those messages, but that in fact it is a message coming from the Lord, and that, for some people they're supposed to stay in place, and others they're going to have to travel great distances to find that place of refuge.
Right.
But when that information comes to them, that they act on it, and they act quickly. And then if the impressions change, that maybe at a later date that you're supposed to relocate, that you do that too, because some people are supposed to stay in place initially, and then later on down the road they're supposed to relocate.
Okay, well, this is maybe the most interesting part to me of your particular experience here, and this is something that I have been looking into for some time, because I hear this from other people, and I have read things about this, both in the scriptures and in LDS history and other sources as well, about places of refuge, sometimes called cities of light, and these are places where people will be protected from what's going on in the rest of the world, and I really would like to talk to you about that as well. But I think we'll save, if it's all right with you, we'll save that for next hour. And I have a question from a young lady by the name of Shelley, who has a question for you on scriptures. Do you know that if there will be new scriptures coming forth?
We will have additional scriptures that are coming, but not for a while, not for a long time, as far as the clarity that I have. And we need to focus on what's happening now to prepare us to get us through the tribulations. But it is well known throughout prophecies from the apostles and prophets, and also from what I was shown, that when the gathering of the lost tribes occurred, that they will bring with them scriptures, and more of the Word of God will be revealed unto us as the veil becomes thinner and thinner, going into after the elders of Israel have defended the Constitution, and it is time to go build the New Jerusalem and the cities of light. And that kind of coincides also with some of the 144,000 that go out. And so there's a lot that goes into that, but the short answer is yes, we will have additional scriptures.
Okay. Now,
or records, additional records.
Sure, mm-hmm. You bet. Let's talk a little bit about one of the other things. You mentioned biological warfare and plague or disease spreading. What can you tell us about
mm-hmm.
that?
It's some nasty stuff. And we've got Ebola going on right now. I'm not going to focus in great detail on that, other than to say that I do talk about it briefly in both books, particularly in the second book, both the Ebola as well as some of the other plagues. I only touch on a few of them. There will be many, but some of them are biological weapons. Some of the worst are biological weapons that have been and are being manufactured. And, we're going to see some increased prices in food and water, and down the road, water contamination, food contamination, and shortages and other things. Some of it due to natural disasters, and a lot of it due to man-made causes and purposeful things that conspiring men and women have caused.
So we're talking really man-made diseases, maybe in addition to those which may come about naturally.
Correct. Uh-huh.
How do people? Have you seen how people survive this? How do they respond to that? What? That seems to be something that is
a myriad of responses. Everything from, men's hearts failing them, like it talks about in the scriptures, where they literally just, out of fear and concern, collapse and die, to those who have such faith that they're healed miraculously, either through the power of the priesthood or through other means. But it's ultimately through faith that people are able to survive. And that's not to say that people who don't survive are not faithful. There are many people that will be very faithful who will be called on to pass to the other side of the veil so that they can be greater utilized. If that's part of the plan the Lord has for them that was designed in the pre-existence, that they were only going to live to the age of 20, then no matter how much intervention we try to do with modern medicine or otherwise, if it's their time to go, they go. I also know in my own situation, I've seen this very clearly and experienced this, that if it's not our time to go, we don't. And so I've witnessed miraculous healings, and really the faith element is absolutely huge. Obviously, we're supposed to do everything we can to help with, modern medicines and oils and herbs and good eating habits and things like that. But there will come a point in time where those things will be taken from us. We'll not be able to have access to them, or they just won't be produced, or we won't be able to get to them for whatever reason, depending on where we are. And then there's other means that the Lord has provided and will provide.
Okay, very good. Well, we are out of time for this hour, so we've got one more hour of the program coming up, ladies and gentlemen. Now, normally, as you know, on Thursdays during the 1 o'clock hour, we have a call from Senator Mike Crapo. We are not going to, we've already contacted his office and told them that we will not be able to do that today. So we are going to keep Julie all the way through until just before the top of the hour next hour. And we have people sending in comments and questions on Facebook. You can send them via email, smitten@pmt.org, or you can text them to me at 312-KBAR. So any of those will result in us getting a question that we will pass on to her. So if you'll hang on, Julie, for just a bit, we will take a break for the news, and then we're going to be back, okay? Julie, thanks for holding on through the break. Now the last hour here, I really wanted to dive into something that is a pet subject of mine, something that I have been very curious about for many years, and I have tried to find information on it. There's not a lot out there, and I want to tell people first and foremost that this hour will be of more concern to those who are of the LDS religion, which, I know there's a lot out there, but there's a lot who are not. And but there are some things that may be very specific to that, and so, but I ask you to listen anyway. Now, Julie, first, before we jump into that, we do have a question from Richard, who wants to know, do you have any kind of idea as to when these kinds of things will start to happen?
That's a favorite question everybody wants to ask, right?
Well, yeah.
We all want to know that.
Hey, listen,
I have an idea.
If you said it was next,
but I don't.
If you said it was next week, if you said it was next week, we would wait until Monday to do anything about it. So.
You got that right. And so I've been instructed not to do that. I don't have specific dates, but I have times and seasons that have been given to me, and for several reasons I'm not supposed to go into that, and one of the main reasons is that very thing. We need to be preparing now. Time is short. Don't delay.
Okay.
And I'm not going to go into more than that. If you listen to the other radio interviews or you read my books, I think through the Spirit can discern what you're ready to hear, when you need to hear it, how you need to hear it, and that's where that needs to come from. It's not supposed to come from me. It's supposed to come from the Lord, if you're supposed to know that.
All right, very good. All right, now the part that I was a little reluctant to dive into because it is so specifically LDS, but I think it's very important, was these places of refuge, cities of light, these places where people will be able to go to be safer from, and I say safer because there's still going to be people that are dying, but people will be safer and more or less protected by the Spirit of God. These come about from the beginning of these, the way I understand it, and I read both your books, and you go into detail on both of them on this. These things come about when the leadership of the LDS Church tells everybody to pack up and leave. Is that accurate?
Well, let me back up a little bit. First of all, make it very clear that I in no way officially represent the LDS Church, and so I need to make sure that people are aware of that.
Sure.
And that at the right time, when that message needs to come, then it will be given. I go into detail in my book about, not great detail, but enough, again, for people to know what they need to know, and then to take that and take their questions and concerns to the Lord, who knows every individual circumstance and knows what's best for that individual. And so what I will say is it's not going to be some splinter-off group that tells you, let's go bug out. And but that not just members of the LDS Church, but other denominations, they'll later on also, there'll be some that will congregate as a result of the natural disasters and foreign troops coming together in tent cities. So I differentiate, there's tent cities, places of refuge, and then later on, down the road, some of those places of refuge that then become cities of light. And so I want to make sure we differentiate between those three, and there will be thousands and thousands of tent cities all over the world, places of refuge all over the world, and some cities of light throughout the world. But the ones that I specifically was shown that pertain to my family have to do with later on, after gathering to a place of refuge that is established by the LDS Church, then it becoming a city of light, before then, the building of the New Jerusalem. And there are several purposes. Yeah, you could say it's to help protect, and it's to help be a place of safety and refuge. It's also a place to refine the Lord's people, to prepare them for either meeting their Maker on the other side of the veil, or for preparing to meet the Savior when he comes for his second coming.
Okay.
So, lots of reasons why we're going to be gathered there. And again, that's in the Scriptures. If you study throughout the Bible, the Book of Mormon, throughout the D&C, and all the books of Scripture, you will see that they really are a type for our day. You take the Scriptures, the stories of Lot, when he left and was told to flee Jerusalem. He just won. There's so many in the Bible where the Lord's people, you look at the story of Moses and how long they wandered in the wilderness there. And you take the first book in the Book of Mormon, and Lehi and Nephi, and the stories of their families, and how, they were warned in dreams and visions for years before it was actually time that the Lord told them it was time to flee. And then when he told them it was time to flee, they were supposed to flee immediately and not look back. And that's a type for our day and what we're going to experience.
So we are going to experience the Lord telling us to get out of Dodge, Through our prophets, and the Spirit will also, if people are in tune, the Spirit will also let them know that it's getting close. And that's what I've been told, that the Spirit will give me a heads up as we get closer. And then when the actual word comes, it's going to be quick, and there's not going to be a lot of turnaround time. And so you mentioned like 48 hours.
In some cases, yeah. Some cases it might be 24 to 48 hours. It might be a little longer than that. In some cases, a little bit longer. But, I've had people say, well, how come the brethren aren't talking about this? We're hearing about hastening the work on both sides of the veil, and we're hearing about family and temple history work. And that's where our focus needs to be right now, because as we're doing those things, it's building the Lord's army on both sides of the veil and gathering the Lord's people in preparation for this, for the days of tribulation and onward. And so when the time is right, then we'll know more. And what we need to focus on is making sure that we're where we need to be at the right time, at the right place, doing what we're supposed to be doing so that we can be ready when the call to action comes. This is an invitation that's given, and it's not a commandment. So it's not like they're going to say, everybody has to do this or else. It's an invitation. And there's a big difference there between an invitation and how some people react to an invitation versus somebody forcing them to do something. There is no such thing as force in the Lord's kingdom. It's all based on agency.
Okay. Now, one of my pet peeves among the LDS people particularly is, what we do on this program, obviously, is we encourage people to be prepared for whatever. because we don't know what the future is going to bring. So we I think it's just prudent that we are prepared for everything. And I have so many people say, "Oh, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm not going to do anything. The brethren in Salt Lake will tell me when it's time for me to worry." And they're not saying anything, so I'm not going to worry about it. How do you react to that?
Right. Well, first of all, the first thing came to my mind is we don't need to worry if we're preparing. And part of preparing, a big part, is spiritually preparing so that when the messages are given, and they have been given and are still being given, that the Spirit is able to tell us what we need to hear to know how we need to prepare. And that's a very individual thing for each person based on the plan the Lord has for each of us. And for some people, if this message doesn't resonate with them, then that's okay. Often that's due to agency, and sometimes it's because it's not part of the Lord's plan for them to maybe gather. There are some that will be called upon to do other things, and so that's okay. I guess where my concern is, and what I've been given a charge is to witness and testify of the reality of these things that are coming, and to share what I know as a witness of Jesus Christ and of our Father in heaven, that their love for us, testifying of the plan that they have, so we don't have fear, but we have faith. But we're also not just sleeping through all of this, and that we're aware of what's going on around us enough that we're not in panic mode and in shock and paralyzed in fear and not doing anything, but that we are acting in faith every day, doing something to prepare for the next step in our lives. And we have been given counsel, not just in modern-day Revelation since the time of the Restoration, but if you look at the beginning of the Bible, if you were to read through all of those scriptures, we have been given warning after warning after warning for thousands of years. And so it's funny to me, there are people that say, "Oh, they're not, we're not hearing anything," and they've been talking about getting food storage for, X number of years, and they act like it's going to happen any day, and I would say to that, if 150 years ago we were counseled to get food storage and be provident in our living, and to get our finances in order, and to get straight with the Lord, how much more important is it for us to do today? Because if it was close 150 years ago in the Lord's timetable, then it's super, super close now. And the Lord does not keep time the way that we do. So close to Him could be 500 years. If they were saying it 500 years ago, and here we are 500 years later, then maybe close is like 2 or 3 years, or maybe it's 10 years. Either way, I know for me that I'm going to see these things in my lifetime, and I'll be 42 in January.
So you're not that old then. You're just a kid.
Thank you. I feel like I'm old some days, just because my body, doesn't feel like it's 42. But in the big scheme of things, I don't know. Maybe I'll be 80 when the Lord finally returns. But I do know that it'll happen in my lifetime, that we will be called to these places of refuge, and it'll be happening. I was given both names of these books and was shown the covers of these books long ago, and then again in the last year, and specifically was given the titles in the order that I was given them. The first one being called A Greater Tomorrow, and the second one called The Time Is Now. And what I have been told very specifically is the time is now for a greater tomorrow. Time is now to prepare for a greater tomorrow. Now is the time to prepare for a greater tomorrow.
Okay. Now, when these
and more, the Spirit just says time is short, and I feel an urgency like I have never felt I felt it in a decade because 10 years ago it seemed like it was close, but it seems so much closer now.
Okay. Now when these invitations come to evacuate. I don't know if that's even the correct word, but to move to these places of refuge. How will that call come, and what will that look like? You were able to see that.
Okay, over a radio show program, I really don't want to go into detail here, but I will just say that it will come from the First Presidency, from the prophet. In my area, I was shown through a broadcast. I don't know if that's how it is all over the world, but that's kind of the clarity that I have right now. And so it'll be official word. So I would just say we need to make sure we're attending our meetings. Sacrament meetings, very, very important, and partaking of the sacraments, very important. And so for those of us that are kind of slacking off in our duties, it's a good time to kind of get our lives in order.
Okay. Who will be invited?
The Lord's people.
All of them, or will they say to
the Lord loves all? The Lord loves all of His children, and so
will some people be told?
And the prophet
you?
is the prophet of the whole earth, not of just the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
He has stewardship as a prophet here and revelator for the whole earth, actually.
But will some people be said? Will some people be told, "No, not you. You can't go"?
I can't go into detail on that other than to say that if you have your lives in order, the Spirit will let you know where you are there, and that if you have a concern about that, then maybe that's time to take pause for reflection and take that to the Lord, whether or not you're on the Lord's side or not. But I will say that I did see dissensions in the camps, and it was made known to me that there were members not of our faith that initially came. How many of them stayed, I don't know. How many, I wasn't given percentages, I was just shown examples, and I saw a huge variation in how people chose to respond to the invitation and who actually decided to accept that call to action, and then those that endured throughout, the time that they were in the camps. Some made it to the camps and left after a very short amount of time, and others stayed and endured for, several months and passed the other side of the veil, and some made it for the long haul into the New Jerusalem.
Well, and some of the things that impressed me about your book was that very thing, is that some people did accept the invitation to evacuate, if you will, and to go to the camps, and then after a very short time thought, man, I was stupid to do this, and they turned around and left.
Right.
Because I guess, you're going to be leaving, for some people, not all obviously, but for some you'll be leaving your homes, you'll be leaving your possessions, and after a couple of weeks, and with porta potties and cold showers, you may change your mind.
Right. Yeah, I've thought of myself in that situation. Anyone who's gone camping for a few nights knows it's tolerable. After about a week, you get a little more settled in, but it gets kind of, you start to miss some of the amenities that you have at home. But what happens when we have, either really, really hot weather or bugs and other things, let alone any kind of, cold weather that comes? And so I've thought of myself and how am I going to respond in the situation, knowing what I know, and I know that it's going to take all of my faith, and it's going to take all the faith of those that are with us to be able to withstand the trials that come upon us. I think there's a misconception for those that have heard about these places of refuge that they think they're going to be protected from all the calamities and all of the plagues and pestilence, and that is not the case. There will be great protection, specifically spiritual protection, which then will help protect us from much of the temporal and physical calamities and diseases and things. And there really is no comparison between what goes on in the camps compared to what eventually goes on in other places in the country. However, having said that, this is not like a Mormon rapture. This is not, all those who are so righteous are able to escape all of this awful stuff. If you read about the prophets and apostles and the stories of those who are righteous, the Lord's people are tried and tested to the very core. And we will be even more so than ever before. It's been made very clear to me that even more so than any other people who have lived on the planet up to this point in time, we will be tried and tested in every way to be able to be prepared for the return of the Lord.
Okay, what will life be like in these camps?
It's going to be hard, but initially it will be hard, and in some ways things will get easier, and other ways some things will get more difficult. I think it's going to be a very humbling experience for every one of us. I think of situations where I was shown, you've got somebody who's highly intellectual and has been very, very professional in their business life, and maybe a top CEO of a company and has been very wealthy, and then they get latrine duty at the camp. Or another situation where someone who, by all accounts, is of somewhat lowly in stature or nature in the world's terms, and yet they're put in a leadership position in the camp. And so it's going to shake people up, and it's going to change the way we've done things and are doing things, and it's going to be tailored specifically, again, to the plan the Lord has for us and who we need to become. So I know for me that I'll be teaching children. I'll be doing helping with some of the medical things and taking care of that aspect. I know that there are many skills that I still need to get that the Lord has told me I need to develop. And I saw myself cooking over a campfire. Well, that makes sense because there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed. And so we'll all have duties and assignments, and sometimes those will rotate. And often they will be things that we don't necessarily enjoy. Maybe there'll be things we're not even really good at, but we learn how to do. So I saw music being played, primary songs and hymns being sung around campfires. And much about what we read about with the early pioneers and some of the struggles that they had, we will go through.
Well, and I come from a tradition, if you will, in our family of, we spend a lot of times in the outdoors and camping and doing things like that. However, I know a lot of people, while I might see that as being all that and maybe not all that unusual, for some people,
right,
this is gonna be like the trial. I mean, just the fact that they're not home, this is gonna be the trial of their life, right?
Yeah. Especially, as we get older, when I was 20 and I went camping on a hard ground, I could go a couple nights without a good night's rest, and I could sleep on the hard ground, and my body didn't hurt everywhere. Not so much now.
That's true.
So that in of itself, the physical aspect of it will be very challenging. I have to say, though, that the miracles that I saw occurring were absolutely fantastic. There really are no words to describe what it's like when you've been shown that there's an individual who's been on serious life support or medicine or has had paralysis or some other ailment for some of them their whole lives, genetic disease and other things, who are healed, and they're healed completely. And then when you take somebody that I saw a situation, I was shown, I think, as a type of things, a situation where an illness came through one of the camps, and one child died from it, another child did not. And those feelings that the mothers had, one mother in particular, kind of her struggle with her faith and some of the jealousy she had towards the other woman who essentially got to keep her child, but the Lord took hers. So you're going to have those elements as well. The dissensions in camp, there'll be camp rules and guidelines, and they'll be enforced. And if people are not living a certain way, then they will be asked to leave. But most often, those people weed themselves out. They'll leave on their own.
They just won't want to obey the rules.
Right, yeah. If we're asked to live certain standards and people don't want to do that, then it's no different than we are now. We weed ourselves out most of the time.
Sure. Okay. Folks, if you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, or I shouldn't say a call, but you can text me on my phone, which is 312-K-BAR, 312-52, is that right? Yeah, I get my phone numbers mixed up here. Or you can, at the same time, you can email me at smitten@pmt.org, or you can send me a message via Facebook. I've got a posting up on that, and you can put anything you'd like in the comment section there. And we will pass those on to Julie. All right, Julie, we got to take a break here. If I sound distracted, it's because I'm doing like 4 things at once here. So hang on just a second. We've got to take a break, and we'll be back with Julie Rowe in just a moment. All right, Julie Rowe is our guest today on Radioactive. I want to get more into these cities of light. Now, they start out as places of refuge, maybe even tent cities, so to speak, of a very temporary nature. Eventually, they evolve into, maybe not at the same locations, but these groups of people eventually evolve into cities of light, which really do have, you use the word, and would be the word I would use, but it's got kind of a sci-fi feel to it. But these places are kind of, for lack of a better term, surrounded by a force field, right?
They are, and that comes through different ways. The simple answer to that is through the faith of the people and the powers of the priesthood being able to shield the camps and shield the people and protect the people from all manner of things. Yeah. And we have those actually when you dedicate a home or a temple or other things. There's kind of a bit of that goes on as well, of protective, and much of that comes from angelic beings that are able to protect that way.
It is interesting, and this has been, as a matter of fact, I was talking to the folks about this just a couple of days ago on the air. This has been a matter that I have been quite interested in for some time, and it is true, my study on this kind of agrees with what you said here, that the light, and that they literally glow. These places literally shine. They literally glow. And this is not an electric light or anything, but it is a glow which comes from a spiritual power, and it is the cumulative glow, if you will, of the faith of the people that live there. Is that accurate?
Yeah. And I was going to say something that's come to mind is for those that have not seen the movie 17 Miracles, I highly encourage you to see that. There are, they just talk about 17 miracles that happened with the early pioneers, and just a small sampling, but they give great examples of the things that will be experienced.
Okay, very good. Now, these places of refuge, these which may, in many cases, will be tent cities, maybe up in the mountains or far away from the normal people out there. These places of refuge will eventually evolve into these cities of light. And what will life be like in those?
Some of them will evolve into that, and some people will have to kind of, I guess, relocate,
yeah, right. Some are going to relocate, sure. But what will these places be?
Well, I did see in those that the Spirit of God will be so evident and so powerful that kind of similar to what the Israelites experienced when Moses was guiding them in the wilderness, the pillar of light and the cloud by day and the pillar of light by night with the tabernacle. So I did witness that there are some tent tabernacles, although different than what they had in the days of Moses, because after Christ came to the earth and was resurrected, then we no longer offer burnt sacrifices. But the other temple ordinances, there will be some of that will go on in the tent tabernacles. And so that's one of the aspects that I'm very clear on that kind of differentiates a city of light versus a tent city or a place of refuge.
Okay, very good. Man, we are running out of time, and I don't have time to get into all of this. We also have other questions out there, and I will try and get to them if we can, but we've only got about 10 minutes left here, less than that. I did want you to tell us what the reaction of the rest of the country would be. Now, outside of these places of refuge, outside of the City of Lights, what is the rest of the country? What is the rest of America or the world going to look like?
Well, a lot of people won't even know that we've made any kind of exodus. Then there'll be some people that will, and they'll actually try to come find the camps. Sometimes they'll be successful, and there'll be some encounters there, and other times they'll, for lack of better words, they'll be blinded from being able to locate the camps. So that'll be a test of faith for those in the camps, and then for those who don't go, there will be other tent cities that will form from other churches and communities and families that get together just out of necessity due to utilities and food shortages and things like that are not accessible anymore, and so they'll gather, safety in numbers. So there'll be some of that. The word chaos is a good word from, I guess what I was shown is a lot of chaos. And then, men's hearts will fail them, and there will be a lot of fear and anxiety and worry as the powers of darkness are unleashed. And then a cleansing. And, I'm not going to go into statistics, but if you read in the book of Revelations, it gives you a pretty good idea of how many people we can expect on the planet that will pass to the other side of the veil. And so there's going to be a lot that goes on there. And I guess what I'm feeling prompted to say is how important it is that we put our faith and trust in God and in our Savior Jesus Christ and in their plan for us, that no matter what the circumstances are that we find ourselves in, no matter where we are now or where we'll end up, knowing that we always have our agency, and other people do too. So there's not really any convincing we can do if we have family members who aren't interested in going with us to wherever we feel like we need to go for safety. But that trusting that, like with our children, that they were God's children before they were ever ours, and that essentially we're just borrowing them to help raise them. And the same thing with our parents or loved ones. I did see many of the sick and infirm that still did go to the camps, and some of the trailers and a few motorhomes and things that were given to me as examples of makeshift hospitals for new and expectant mothers, newborn babies, and the sick, elderly, and infirm. So I would say, don't lose faith that if you're in a circumstance, or one of your loved ones or someone that you know is in a circumstance where it seems like it's impossible for them to go, just trust the Lord's plan. And if they're supposed to go, they'll go. And no matter the situation, then we leave that in the Lord's hands. And just knowing that, the rest of the world, we'll see everything from, FEMA camps being utilized similar to World War II and worse. And so it's going to get ugly. But again, it's nothing new to us. That's in the scriptures. We've been warned about it, and it's just time for us to kind of wake up and make sure that we're in the right place at the right time, doing what the Lord would have us do, so that we can know where we need to be for ourselves and for our loved ones, and then ultimately leaving the rest up to the Lord and trusting in His plan.
All right. Let me take a quick look here over any of the questions here. Some of them I think have already been answered, but others may not have. Another question, of course, is to the timing on this. And we understand that you don't know exactly, but that you are confident it will be in your lifetime, and that we are at the beginning right now. Is that accurate to say?
The beginning of what? Of the official days of tribulation? No, but they'll soon be upon us within the next several years, few years.
Okay, yeah. Very good. And so we need to keep our eyes open for that. What kind of preparation should we make? I think we'll probably cover that tomorrow a little bit, so we probably won't cover that today. We're really out of time, except I promised I'd give you the last 5 minutes of the show here so that you could, I'm just going to let you go. I'm going to release the reins and let you tell the folks what you think the Lord wants them to know.
Okay. First, I just want to thank you, Steve, for the time that you've taken today, for providing this opportunity to share this with your listeners, because I know there are those out there that have not listened or read anything else anywhere else, and this is probably the first time that they've heard any of this before. This is not new information. I'm not the only one that has seen these things or experiences these things, and there will be others that will come forward. I have been contacted by now hundreds and hundreds of people who, after I wrote my book, then contacted me and said that they have had dreams and visions, some near-death experiences, and others promptings and impressions and things from their patriarchal blessings, and other forms of personal revelation. Some of them have had ancestors from the other side of the veil that have visited them, telling them of the exact same things that I'm testifying of, that are in both of my books and that you've heard me talk about today. So I don't want people to take my word for it. I want you to go to the Lord and go specifically to the source of all truth and light and knowledge, and ask Him, who you are and what you need to be doing with your life to be able to prepare for the days that are soon upon us, and just know that I'm just a simple witness, and that what I've been shown is mainly for me and my family, but also to serve as a witness and to testify of God's love for us, of our Savior's plan of redemption, and that we need to get our lives in order. I know that repentance is not just a daily thing, but a minute-by-minute thing when we're doing it right. So if there are things that we need to correct in our lives, we need to do it soon, because some of us are going to meet our Maker very quickly in the next couple of years. Others of us, it might not take, it might take a little bit longer. But ultimately, we all need to have our lives in order for whatever it is that we're supposed to be doing and wherever we're going to end up. And then the other thing is just, expressing my love for the Lord and gratitude for Him and His plan, knowing that He loves each of His children individually. He knows us by name. He knows what we need, when we need it, how we need it, and where we need it. And we need to trust in Him, myself included, and not let the adversary invoke fear or cause concern with undue worry, because shame and fear and anxiety and all of those negative thoughts and patterns are not of the light. They're not of the Lord. And recognizing that, and so when we start to feel that, recognize that and where it's coming from, and then go back to the source of light, which gives us the opportunity to focus on the good things in our lives and the good things that are coming. And I just want to let you know that I am a witness of our Savior Jesus Christ and of His plan, and I testify of these things in His name.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that very much. I know you got to go pick up your kid from school, so we will let you go. And the only thing I would ask is, can we get you back on a future show?
That's a possibility. We'll have to talk. I don't know how my schedule's going to be the next little while, but I'll kind of think about that and pray about that, and we can kind of talk later. So just
not immediately, but sometime.
And I was going to say, I think you said you were recording this, and so we'll have that link available on my website at www.julieroweprepare.com. Free Mills Crenshaw radio show programs are there. Some other things will be coming in the future. So if you want to look for updates on any kind of speaking engagements or book signings or other radio programs and shows and things like that, you can always go to my website for updates. And we'll hopefully get this link to your show on there too, so that people can get on and listen to the recording again, or they can tell their loved ones about it as well.
All right, we will get that processed and uploaded and provide you with a link for that ASAP.
Great. Thanks so much, Steve. Have a great night.
Well, thank you very much, Julie Rowe. We appreciate that. Once again, if you would, give the people the title of your books and where they can get them.
Yeah, the first book is called A Greater Tomorrow, and the second book is called The Time Is Now. And they're available in Siegel bookstores online, as well as on Amazon.com, and several other bookstores all over the country. So you can Google that and hopefully find what the right place is for you to purchase it.
Okay, very good. And they are available locally at the Book Plaza, 220 West 11th Street, Burley. All right, well, thank you very much, Julie.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.